Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of the Future of Work show. Sometimes I can't even believe that we've done 29 great episodes on the future of work. We've had amazing guests. They've been leading professors and scholars from universities like Stanford, Cornell, Wharton, Duke, Columbia, IMD, and so on. And we've had leading founders and presidents of Indian and global organizations. For those of you who are joining us for the absolutely first time, hi, I'm Shalini, and I'm a co founder of Uncube, an education and advisory firm around the future of work. I work there along with my other co founders, Papia Banerjee and Jaspreet Bindra, and we all work with our client organizations to help them understand how to prepare themselves and their leaders for a very fast changing future of work. Now, today's show is about a topic that I'm sure many of us are really interested in. What does it mean to pursue flexible working opportunities? And I have with me just the right person to answer some of our questions. My guest today is Shreya Prakash, co founder of FlexiBees. Hi, Shreya.
Hi, Shalini.
So happy that you could join on the show. Thank you so much for making the time.
My pleasure entirely. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Shreya is an IIM Bangalore graduate and she's worked with Hindustan Lever for most of her career before she started out FlexiBees. So, Shreya, let me ask you right off the bat, what got you interested in flexible working in the first place?
Uh, I think the trigger was when we realized that there is a huge pool of qualified women, really talented women who they've taken a break from the full-time and traditional workforce, but who want to participate, who want to utilize their talents, but on their own terms, flexibly through remote options, through part-time options, and they don't have the right avenues. They don't have opportunities that are commensurate to the talent they have and the experiences they've had so far. So we realized that in fact it's the personal story of one of us three founders, and it kind of hit us very hard that there is a huge talent pool, that's lying completely unutilized. And we talk about the war for talent, we talk about companies not being able to find the right skills, and here is a big base that's wanting to work, but not maybe in the same way that we've been defining work so far. So that was the trigger. And then we started talking to businesses and we realized that there is a demand match as well. The businesses looking for more flexible, more agile, on demand hiring models, more affordable hiring models, which can help them quickly catch up with competition, or hire experienced talent, but maybe at half the cost of what it would be for a full-time person. And yeah, we just decided that the demand is there, the supply is there, and we can do the match. So that's what got us into FlexiBees.
Yeah, I'm so glad you spoke about this because this whole month, because of Women's Day, there have been so many conversations around women in the workforce. And for those of you who are joining us, India ranks in the bottom 10
Mhm.
in terms of
Yeah.
women's workforce participation. It's only 20%. And unbelievably, it's been dropping over the last 2 decades. We're one of the only countries in the world where our workforce participation, instead of going up, has been falling. So we were in the 1990s, we were 30%, and today we are 20%. And of
Yeah.
course, many, many explanations are given. But the reality is that even in urban settings, two of three women between the age of 30 and 50 choose not to work. So I can imagine that this would be such a helpful, service that you do for them. But is it just for women though?
Not at all. I mean, we are in fact very focused on making sure that it works for the businesses. In our opinion, and the way that we built our business, it is only sustainable if it brings real tangible value to businesses as well. So, in fact, we got into it after we spoke to a bunch of startups at that time. to understand if there was a market. And when we realized that, there was almost no need for education, the market was ready. When we spoke to a few startups, they said that they would love to hire experienced talent, but because they may not be able to afford full-time talent, part-time hiring seemed like a great option. Being able to hire somebody, quickly in say 2 weeks, because you don't have to negotiate, lengthy notice periods. And it's not a full-time hire, so you don't have to maybe look at culture fit in the same way that you would look at if you were hiring somebody permanently as an employee. So some of those factors make it very quick hire. And we realized that yes, it's a very good demand fit. There is a big demand as well for it. And we are very demand first, so we look at the requirements. We make sure that we give the right match to that requirement, instead of looking at our pool and making sure that we find the jobs for the pool. Because only if we are demand first will we be able to make it sustainable for both ends, which is what it needs to thrive.
Yeah, that's so true. Shreya, when you and I were having, a conversation a few days ago, and I spoke about flexi working and, remote working, I think you immediately corrected me and you said that flexible working comes in a wide variety of shapes. So, would love to understand from you, what are the different formats for flexible working?
Yeah. So, I think one of the ways that we position ourselves differently, say, from what is known as the gig economy, is that flexible working goes few notches over and beyond that. It is about basically hiring somebody as an employee, somebody who would work with you, on core business roles, on everyday business operations, but perhaps in a remote setting, not from their homes or from wherever they are, or and with fewer hours. It could be 4 to 5 hours per day. It could be 2 to 3 hours per day, even. So the 2-3 different axes along which we play, at least, are time. So the amount of number of hours that you are contracting for example, which could range anywhere from say 2 to 3 hours per day to 5 to 6 hours per day. We also do full time and the remote combination now, and that's a whole different story. It's something that's really picked up after, and I can speak about it later. But primarily, we focus on the part-time range spectrum between 2 to 3 to 5 to 6 hours. That's one axis. The second axis is the location. So we like to encourage and nudge our clients to do as much remote hiring as is possible. And in fact, 90% of our hiring is fully remote, and the remaining has some elements of face-to-face interactions. So that's the second. The third axis would be seasonal work, project-based work, quick vacancy filling, those kinds of use cases which enable a lot of businesses to hire really good skills, but maybe for a short period. So those would be the 3-4 axes that we play across.
What are some of the most unusual positions clients have given you?
Yeah, we've had some very interesting ones. So, in fact, this we spoke about in our chat as well the other day, that one of my favorite examples is of a government body which is based out of Singapore. And once the worst of the pandemic was behind us and they started hiring again, they came looking for a webinar marketer, somebody who could conduct online events and market it well, get people to register, come, and all of that. And what was interesting also was that the government body is in Singapore. The client who came to us, that person is based in France, and the talent that we gave to that person is working out of Visakhapatnam. So it's a brilliant, three-way, 3-point story in remote working, and how it can really, bring the world a lot closer. And there are lots of interesting things about this particular one. For example, the talent. She is the spouse of a defense force officer, and that itself is a very interesting story for us, because there are many spouses of
Many.
defense forces, personnel who very qualified and
Very
talented.
well.
If only remote working was much more normalized, would be able to sort of have good careers, have good thriving careers from wherever it is that they are posted. But in the absence of that, it's a pool again. It's a huge pool that's lying unutilized. So and the other thing which is interesting about this one is that she got promoted in the role. So she was hired, say, for the webinar marketer role, which for 4 to 5 hours. It was a new role. They wanted to try it out, and that went on for 3 months. And then after that, they wanted to hire her on their own roles, increase the responsibility to making her, a marketing head for some of their, multi-channel marketing activities, and for more time. So it's a great story for us. So that's one of my favorite examples.
No, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I think as organizations hopefully become much more outcome focused, then it sort of opens their mind to, exploring talent with far more, diverse backgrounds than perhaps organizations have been accustomed to. So tell me, Shreya, when you speak with clients, what do you think are their primary motivations for looking for someone in a flexi work position versus, say, the regular full-time employee?
Right. So it's there are many reasons, and they overlap and crisscross. So one of the primary segments that we have as clients are small businesses, startups, and small growing businesses who want to expand. So they perhaps have the product market fit, and they want to get into more overt sales and marketing. And but then those talent that experience is expensive. So if you want to hire somebody who's an experienced sales personnel, if you want to hire somebody who's an experienced marketer, or even a digital marketer, which is more, say, a business focused role, you would find them expensive if you were to hire them full time. So these are the people who really resonate with the idea of hiring experienced talent, but maybe through affordable models like part-time and remote as well, which has its own cost benefits. So that would be, say, the crux of our USP. And then we have some of the enterprise clients that we service. They come to us because they have, say, a hiring freeze, but they want to hire somebody good, say, for a contractual position, or there is a vacancy that they have for a few months, and they want to hire somebody very quickly to fill that vacancy. Or it's a project role, and they want very specific skills. For example, when an MNC wanted to bring a part of its global portfolio to India, they created a customer marketing role, a B2B customer marketing role, which is a very specific set of skills. It entails a very specific set of skills. It didn't require a full day's worth of work. Equally, it did require that person to have the right skills. So they came to us, and we gave them a customer marketing person with experience in B2B, and that contract has been on now for the last 3 years. So those are some of the reasons why, say, larger organizations would come to us. Sometimes it's seasonality. So we are in talks with a consulting organization, which during certain parts of the year, they have a much higher peak demand for, say, CAs or auditors and that kind of talent, and we have that pool available with us. So yeah, these are some of the reasons why people come to us. Companies come to us, and of course we're realizing that there is another big reason for those markets which are slightly better versed with flexible talent in the first place. They understand the freelance economy. For them, the fact that we vet our candidates very stringently before we give them out to our clients, that in itself is also a value add. So there is something in the space of also companies not wanting to spend too much time and energy in doing that entire hiring process themselves, and having a partner who can do that for you and give you very curated and targeted talent. So all of these are reasons why people would come to us, or people would choose flexible working.
Makes sense. So for startups, it is the opportunity to have access to talent, which they can't hire full time. And for larger organizations, it's things like they might have a hiring freeze and they need access to talent, or they're looking for a very specific skill set and a skill set which is perhaps not that widely available, or seasonality.
Yeah.
Do you see this having risen over the last year through the pandemic?
Oh yeah, definitely. So the pandemic's been good to us. Once the hiring freezes were off, once the lockdowns were off, people started hiring again, and we started seeing an increased demand than what it was before the pandemic. And owing to two reasons. One reason is that the whole world has done an experiment in remote working, so there is a lot more acceptance of it today. The other reason is, it has its origins in something which is not great, which is that a lot of companies have had to face cost pressure. Bottom lines are really tight today, so contractual hiring is on the rise. People or companies do want to be more dynamic, more lean. They want to have leaner cost structures. So again, contractual hiring works well in those situations. So the incidence of hiring on contract itself has gone up. So that's the other reason why our demand went up. And of course, the third thing is that a lot of very focused digitization is happening across the globe. A lot of small businesses getting online, creating their online presence. So that itself requires specific skill sets. From starting from developing your app perhaps, or creating your web WordPress site, or creating an account for yourself on Shopify. Starting from there to hiring somebody in digital marketing who can help you get the word across, help you get leads. So there is a gamut of roles that opened up, and webinar marketer is one of them. Gamut of roles that opened up because of the pandemic, and because everybody had to come online. So that also contributed to our demand going up.
And you have shorter lead times, from what I can understand.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they're pre-vetted.
Yeah, they're pre-vetted. Of course, there are in our more, say, running roles, we have an empanelment in place. Some of the others where the roles are more unique, it takes us a little more time to vet for that role. The other reason why it takes less time is because the pool is not engaged in full-time employment. So most of the time that you spend hiring from, say, other companies is spent in negotiating notice periods and some of those things. So that is a big chunk of time that goes away.
I'm just going to read some of the comments. Hi Weber, thank you for joining us. Hi Satish, good afternoon. Hi Rama, even CEO needs counseling. Weber, sure, do reach out to me. Harshvardhan, hi, good afternoon. Hi Sritama. Alpita says, we've realized the importance of the gig economy more during pandemics. Would love to know. I think you just answered that. Any particular strategy you adopted through the pandemic that was different in any way?
Not really. I mean, we did a lot of, we were closely tracking how our pool, was experiencing the pandemic, because these are all women who suddenly, for them, the work and the responsibility kind of went up. So we were tracking that very closely to see how they dealt with it, hand-holding them, giving them ways in which they could manage it better. And we were also at the beginning trying to consult our clients into how they could transition to remote much better, because it was a period of great chaos at that time. But other than that, nothing really. Our business as usual worked well during the pandemic.
Shreya, I'm curious about one thing. I mean, I completely understand the fact that there's such a large pool of women who are extremely talented, but are at this point at least not looking for work in the more traditional format. Are there any other such pools other than women?
Other than women? So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Although I do think that of the global freelance pool, or rather, the data says that of the global freelance pool, around 60 to 65% of them are women, no matter what the motivation is. So yeah, the other pool that we have, apart from women who've taken a break, is the pure freelance pool that is looking to work in a freelance manner because of various things. They get more variety. They get to work across different industries, different roles. For them, skill is their currency. So they get to really hone their skills, learn new skills as they work across different kinds of organizations and different kinds of roles. Interesting work, and work with variety, independence. These are some of the motivations for the freelance pool that we have. And but also, I think if you dig deep enough, you would see that some of them would at least have some element of wanting to balance their lives in some way. So even though it works very well and on answers to their motivations of even variety and skilling, it also helps in making them, say, more available for, say, somebody who they need to care for back home, or that they are sitting in a location where there aren't any great jobs around available. So there are overlapping motivations in that way. And hence, it's taken men a little longer. If you're talking about, men, since we are talking about another alternate pool, it's taken men a little longer to, sort of start, wanting to work in this manner. But today we are seeing that is increasingly also happening. And with both these kinds of motivations. So the men who do want to work in the freelance way because of the variety and the independence it gives, also because some men are definitely looking at care responsibilities as well, or they are sharing care responsibilities with their spouses. So that's also happening today.
Is there any particular age group amongst men that is, a large base for you?
So first of all, for us, we don't. For our pool itself, we have only women that we cater to, or we solve this problem for at this point in time, at least. So while we are seeing an increased incidence amongst men, at this point we don't have men in our pool. Yeah, but if you were to say an age group, I would say it's quite well spread. So we've had men, 23, 24-year-olds who've never worked before, who are entering the workforce, but they want to work. They just don't know any other way of working. They want to work in a way that gives them more independence. It's just the best fit for them as a life choice, and it allows them to do other things. And this goes for men and women both of that age group. It goes well with some of these other passions they have in life. They want to experience life, even outside of the 9 to 9 office culture. So that's one. But there are also more experienced men who perhaps have reached a certain level of success and then want to specialize in certain areas and want to work on their own time. They do not want to engage with, say, all the various pitfalls that comes with being part of an organization. So there is a spectrum there too.
While there is this whole, you're absolutely right, there is this increasing demand for flexibility, and people want flexibility. We're seeing it even in actually full-time workers, that they want much more flexibility today than perhaps they would have voiced a year ago. And flexibility definitely in terms of hours, which hours are they working and which location are they working from. The pandemic has opened out, I think, many, many more possibilities than anyone would have seriously considered, just a year back. But I'm curious about one thing, Shreya. Do you think in India there is still a desire for, like the regular full-time job, and these flexible options are like, only for those who can't get full-time jobs? Is it like a stepping stone, or do you think this is its own audience?
No, I think it has its own audience for sure. So in India, in fact, I agree that for the primary motivation wouldn't be work-life balance. The Indian pool is still at that place where it's a driven pool. They want career advancement, say, over work-life balance. That's overall if you look at the averages. But I would still say that there is a growing segment of people who, not because of a constraint, but because of choice and the way they want to lead their lives, do want more flexibility, or want flexible working options. Like you said, even for full-time employees, they do want a little more flexibility in their working days today. But apart from that, there is a growing pool of people who want flexible work options as a choice, and that's growing.
Even is there a flip side? Sorry, is there a flip side, Shreya, to flexible working that you are aware of because you've now seen so many cases that you think people who are
Yeah, there
considering should be aware of?
Definitely. So there are flip sides. So one of the flip sides could be that while you've decided to work, say, for a certain number of hours in the day, you end up working for more time than that. You always do end up working for more time than that. And while that is okay, to some extent, it's important to sort of keep a watch over that, because if it doesn't, ultimately, then it won't work for you as an option, and it'll end up burning you out in one way or the other. So both from the aspect of yourself internally being able to sort of separate your work and at what point you get off work, when you have the freedom to work flexibly, and from the aspect of managing that expectation with the client that you're working for, or the company that you're working for. It's important to keep track of what you signed up for in the first place, and making sure that it's what you are actually living, and that it continues to work for you. So that's one. And secondly, of course, as I think overall, the flexi space today is one where it is working also very well, because it's very cost efficient for organizations. There are a big chunk of the compensation which comes from benefits that is not part of the flexible cost structure at all. And some of it will evolve over the years as more and more people come into the gig or the flexi system. It will put pressure on employers as well to sort of start bearing some of the costs of the benefits that they provide to their employees, and it will come and stabilize at some point. So that is the other area that today is a gap, and that our view is that it will evolve over the next few years, reach an equilibrium.
We had a conversation on this show with Uber
Hmm.
and with Manvi Baveja from Uber, and
Yeah.
obviously they're one of the world's largest employers
Yeah.
of gig workers. And she mentioned something very interesting: the evolution of some kind of social security system for people who are working flexibly, because
Yeah.
individual organizations are not necessarily providing that kind of security safety net which many
Yeah.
people still long for. How far do you think we're there in India?
We are not there at all. Although I think the government is aware of this and is taking some, fledgling measures to make it a little better. Also, there are third-party players that are entering the space now, and maybe creating an ecosystem to provide benefits for the huge pool of gig workers that the past 5 years have emerged in India. So there
Yeah.
are, yeah, so there are these initiatives being taken, but even globally, it's not where it should be. So in India, we are still playing catch up. So there is a lot more that can be done here.
Do you think there's some very big mind shifts that need to happen both within organizations and amongst individuals to make flexi work successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is some mind shift that needs to happen for organizations and individuals as well. But I would say organizations for sure. So I was thinking about this, and one of the things that I realized was that one of the things that we as startups do well is that we experiment with a new idea very quickly, and that is why startups are agile. We call it the MVP, which is the minimal viable product philosophy. You take something, you run with it, you get learnings from it, and then you incorporate those learnings. But we see that sometimes organizations come to us very desirous of wanting to incorporate more gig workers into their workforce, but they get stalled by perhaps wanting to know all the answers from the day zero. For example, how will the performance be measured? What kind of facilities? What kind of benefits? And it's somewhat difficult to design everything and a perfect system from day zero and then start. So I would say one of the, mind shifts that needs to happen, not just because of the gig and flexi economy, but in general in the coming, years, to be able to, participate well, given the world has become so dynamic and is changing so fast, is for larger organizations to have a more MVP approach. I mean, just start, integrate, see how it works, and then, quickly change things at your end to incorporate the learnings. So I would say that would be one. The other thing would be, of course, and that holds true for even your in-house employees, would be, this is true for larger companies, smaller companies, is the whole idea of performance, measurement that needs to happen through output and not through the number of hours. It's a very, very deeply ingrained philosophy in workplaces, that, the more hours you spend, the more work you're doing. And it just baffles us, because we are in the knowledge economy, we are in the information age. A person's experience is what eventually, decides the kind of output that they'll have. Of course, hours do play a role, but it's more it more depends on the kind of experience the person brings to the table. So fortunately, some of that is changing rapidly, also because of the pandemic effect. But yeah, that is a shift that will that definitely is a shift. There is more sort of realization that needs to happen there. Yeah, so I would say that. And I think the third big thing would be that flexi workers, and like you touched upon, like you mentioned, come with different motivations. So when you're thinking of growth for a flexi worker, it could be for somebody who wants to work the normal way, but just for fewer hours and remotely. Growth would work the same way that it works for your internal employees. It's about increasing responsibilities, maybe even ramping up hours. And we have many examples of that, of people who started working with fewer hours. As they got more comfortable, they ramped up their hours as well. So growth would mean that. But for some others whose motivations are different and they want more variety, for them it could be a different, growth path in your organization. For example, I have seen cases where the same person could be made available to work on multiple different projects, and that would give them, the variety that they seek. So, your growth path would be different for different kinds of flexi workers within the organization. So,
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, Shreya, because when we think about motivations of full-time employees, we sort of have a much deeper understanding, because most of the people who are decision makers have also been, in those roles, and so there's a better understanding than of people who are flexi workers, because there is, as you said, a wide variety of career aspirations, and for some, or for many, the career aspirations might be about increased responsibility and a chance for larger roles. And for someone else, it might be something else. So, having that approach, having an outcome approach, which we are hoping that more and more organizations have become sensitive to, thanks to the pandemic, sort of necessitating a much more outcome-based approach to performance management. We hope we see a lot more of that. And of course, you spoke about the desire to experiment and figure things out, not necessarily have all the answers before you speak. So I'm going to stay with you. Sorry, go ahead.
I read an amazing statistic the other day. I think it's part of the Deloitte 2021 report, which said that around 47% of organizations today are saying that they'll plan for multiple case scenarios today, versus, say, half of that which said that before the pandemic. And before the pandemic, a majority said that they would only plan for, say, the most likely scenario versus multiple ones. So,
we've seen that across, particularly those organizations where there were supply chain, issues right when the pandemic started, or privacy issues or security issues. So there's been, I think, a much greater widening of, considering possible scenarios that may occur. So I'm going to take a few questions. Dheeraj, hi Dheeraj. What roles do you focus on, Shreya? Does it include general management, strategy, and operational excellence roles?
Yes, absolutely. So our vision is to make flexi work the norm. So our roles start at, say, a customer service role, and they can go up to, say, a part-time CMO, CFO kind of roles as well. Those are the roles that we've also placed. General management, yes. Operational roles, absolutely. Sales, marketing, management, consulting, digital content, finance, investment banking, you name it. We have those. We have the talent in our pool.
Okay. Arpita, hi. I believe one of the segments that will be immensely benefited from flexi work is mothers of newborns, mothers in general, perhaps. Whenever we talk about motherhood and career, we always talk about the negative side. Do you think there are positive aspects, like some improvement in leadership skills, improvement in work efficiency for mothers? That's a really good and a tough question, Arpita.
Yeah, I yeah, I'm in two minds on that. I do think that being a mother, a working mother, definitely makes you very focused on efficiency and productivity, because you're juggling multiple things. So with the productivity mindset, you are likely to deliver much higher ROI for whoever it is that you're working for. So that definitely is true. For our pool, we definitely see in our pool we definitely see an advantage. So these are women who are very keen to work. So the work ethic, the commitment is off the charts. They come with a fire in their belly, which is very different from, say, the school. So they come with a higher commitment to the jobs that we place them in. So we feel that the mother pool, or the returning to work pool, has actually been a great advantage to us in that way.
Shreya, I'll sort of echo that. I remember my own experiences actually when my kids were very little, and I think motivation levels are very very high because particularly if you've spent time building your career, you don't want to lose it, and yet you have very limited time, at times at least. So you're very very
Yeah.
efficient in whatever you do, and you're always searching for, okay, what's the best way to get to whatever XYZ outcome in the shortest amount of time. That's absolutely true. And in fact, back in business school, we had a professor, Indira Parekh. I don't know if you studied with her. I remember in one of the classes, she said, if you really want to see what is efficiency, look at a working mom and
Yeah.
see, how she gets up at 5 a.m. and do people's boxes. Now, it's unfortunate that, working moms have had to do that, but, and goes through a number of household tasks before she even leaves for work and then comes back and does,
Absolutely.
a whole ton of work afterwards. So I think there
5:30
is,
a.m. myself for the last many
yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
year almost. Yeah.
yeah. Sanjay, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Arpita, another segment, people with disabilities who find it difficult to commute.
Yeah.
What's their response like? And what's the willingness of companies to recruit them through FlexiBees?
It's a great question. So, to be honest, at this point, we are not focusing on this pool as a separate pool. We do have, the occasional person that is part of our primary pool, and we are as committed to placing them as we are to any other person in our pool. But I do think that it's a great space because of the reason that's mentioned over here. That again, it's an underserved talent pool, and they are unable to participate in the traditional workforce. So we would definitely, it's something that we have on our horizon as one of the pools we want to open up to in a very intentional and focused manner.
No, I think that will be great, Shreya, as you get to that. I think that will be
Yeah.
great. It has been an
Yeah.
absolutely underserved pool.
Yeah.
And perhaps with remote work getting so much more acceptable through the
Yeah.
pandemic, it might certainly get easier.
Yeah.
Shantanu, hi. Srimati Chiani, thank you. Thank you for joining. Shantanu has a response. Arpita Ghatak, some of the company believe that disabilities of people can contribute more efficiently than normal people. There's no question of their dedication.
Yeah.
Probably true, Shantanu. I will not be surprised. I think the opportunities are so few, and it's so unfortunate that we haven't been able to make that match quite as well. Um, And I hope that many organizations like yours, Shreya, will play that role of, sort of
Yeah.
helping organizations connect with
Yeah.
non-conventional, non-traditional
Yes.
talent pools.
Yes.
Uh, Swati, for large organizations, are there other barriers to adapt to a gig economy pool?
I wouldn't, other barriers apart from the ones that we've spoken. I wouldn't think so. I think there are only upsides now. So of course you have to figure out as an organization how to integrate them, how to sensitize your employees to a person working very differently from how you may be working. But there are only upsides. I mean, you have today organizations cannot predict sometimes the kind of work that they'll be doing in the next 5 months. Like I know that large organizations have their talent strategy mapped out for the next year or more, but sometimes things change so quickly that you cannot predict, and then you quickly need to hire people. Your skill sets may be far more diverse. You may need a combination which is very unique. You may need somebody who has digital understanding and an understanding of the developmental area as well, somebody who's worked with underserved audiences, and that's a very difficult combination to have in your full-time workforce. So there are only upsides today, and some of these challenges of how to integrate, how to manage their performance and careers have to just be dealt with, and has to be taken in your stride.
Swati, I'll tell you that from an Uncube point of view, we absolutely predict that we're going to see a much greater increase in the use of flexible work opportunities simply because organizations are going to need to move much, much faster. And it gives them the opportunity to access, specific talent sets in a much more efficient way, both time and money wise. So as organizations need to be much more agile and innovative, our prediction is that we will see flexible work options on the rise. Of course, aided by all the stuff that Shreya spoke about, the fact that through the pandemic, remote working has become, it's become normal, or the fact that even an outcome orientation to work is, I wouldn't say we're entirely there yet, but at least it's a huge shift from a year back where the idea that you would be measuring performance largely based on outcome was maybe spoken of but not really practiced. So I think
Yeah.
there are so many factors which are the digitization of work, the large scale digitization of so much work. Without that, many of these would have been a lot more challenging. So our own prediction is we're going to see a lot more increase to some of these. Let's see. Vijay, hi Vijay. How do you change mindset of owner-driven Indian organizations towards accepting the reality of this?
Yeah. So of course there is a spectrum again on the acceptance, but I would say that I have seen a lot of acceptance coming from slightly unconventional segments as well. So we in our client set also have organizations which have which are more traditional businesses, and they've understood that if they want to grow, if they want to quickly adapt, they need an unconventional mode of working. Some of it happened during the pandemic. We have traditional businesses who've been doing, say, one line of work for 20 years. When the pandemic came, they quickly had to switch, and they needed to then hire somebody who perhaps would not work in the same way as their internal employee set was, and they saw the benefit of it, and that was the biggest sort of lubrication towards changing their way of working. So I would say that necessity is the mother of invention in that sense. So once they see the benefit, they know that there is a need, it will change on its own. And in fact, I sometimes think that larger Indian organizations are more entrenched in the way that they work, maybe because like I mentioned earlier, they want to sort of think through all aspects of how it will impact, which is also, of course, to a certain extent the right thing to do. But then, yeah, there needs to be a balance in moving quickly and
Yeah.
thinking through to the last mile.
Yeah, in fact, some of the research which Uncube has been doing shows that organizations are at very different stages of maturity in, how they work with flexible workers. And there are organizations which have much greater understanding of, working with gig or flexi workers in a way that meets their aspirations. So, maybe at the start, the motivation is entirely, task based or uh, but they're able to sort of work against that, shall I say, knee-jerk reaction to be purely transactional, to think about, okay, how do we meet the needs of this population, because those are different needs, and then creating policies that really are best suited for, the stated unstated needs of the target from which they are recruiting flexi work.
Hmm.
And so, as organizations, and a couple of whom have been on this show earlier, we've had Uber, we've had Top Coder, who have tons of experience with flexi work and very high levels of maturity in how they work with that talent pool and understands and respects their very different, aspirations. We're going to see, I think, organizations move more along that spectrum and become much more sensitive to not just the efficiency, but the other parts of it. Anshuman, hi, thank you for joining. I've noticed cases where people with a day job are trying flexi or gig work. Do you welcome this trend, or is it even a trend or just an exception?
It is a trend, but I think it's a trend driven by largely necessity. Unfortunately, there are people who need to work multiple jobs, and that's why they're doing it. And I mean, it. I would say I don't personally like the trend, but it's not for me to like or dislike it. It's just it seems very exacting from the person's point of view who's trying to work in this manner. Um, it's not an exception, is all I would say. The other, motivation towards working multiple jobs apart from your day job is to get a little bit of more variety again. So slightly better. So the day job may be more operational. The other bits that you're doing may be more, of a project nature, for example, which give you an insight into different kinds of, work or upskill you for career progress. So those are the ones which I would welcome. We would welcome, but if it is for the if it is to make ends meet, then that's definitely very hard on working in that way.
Anshuman, in fact, we're seeing that quite a bit in technology spaces, where people who really want to hone their skills, besides whatever they're doing in their day job, are looking for some really interesting cutting edge work that will sort of sharpen their acumen and give them that extra edge in their specific area of expertise. We're also seeing that there are some organizations who are getting comfortable with the idea, and all of this goes back to having a much more flexible mindset than was the case earlier, and the ability to measure outcome and performance based on outcome rather than hours per se. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting trend, but thank you
it's an
so much for
interesting.
bringing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also larger organizations who are comfortable with it, understand that allowing or enabling your employee to work at different jobs. First of all, is a great retention strategy for some of
Yeah.
your employees who want to work in that manner. And secondly, it also keeps them more current, and somewhere it also feeds back to the quality of work they'll be doing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Makhijiani says, in India, even before the COVID crisis resulting in work from home and more applicability of flexible hours, most of the organizations were more interested that employees come to office and spend a fixed number of hours with emphasis on attendance. Employers also need to have a mindset. I couldn't agree more, except I'll say it's not just India. This has been true everywhere in the world. It's a shift. It's a huge shift.
Yeah.
Arpita, hi again. Shantanu, I do believe the same, but again, many companies don't have the infrastructure to support that. Hence, I thought flexi work can be beneficial for them. Absolutely. I think not all offices are PWD, sort of friendly. Uh, Swati asks, what about labor law compliance norms? I don't know if you would be aware of that. I think she's speaking to the working in a gig role. I guess, Swati, that's your question?
Yeah, but so if she's talking about whether we are compliant, then yeah, we are absolutely compliant. But labor laws are changing very quickly. Like I said, you know, there is focus on this area. People are watching the space to see how it's working for both ends, the
Yeah,
employers and the gig workers. So yeah,
yeah.
there is of course a need to keep a very watchful eye on the labor laws.
So my last question, Shreya, any advice for people who are considering flexi work themselves?
Um, I would say that it's important to put yourself out there, to and also I think to define why you're wanting to work flexibly. Like I said, there are many different motivations. So if it is, and each will have their own path and journey. So if you are a person who wants to return to working through flexi work, then the journey there is very different. It involves, doing a scaping of your area of expertise of the company, seeing what skills have evolved in the time that you've been away, and upskilling yourself, maybe creating a portfolio of work, maybe getting some maybe courses or internships under your belt. If it is because you want more variety, along with your day job, or you are a freelancer or want to start freelancing, slightly different. You may already have a very clear idea of what skills you have and what are the skills or areas you want to start developing. And then the thing to do is to go and sign up on platforms, again creating a portfolio, making yourself more visible, and taking up work, even though it may seem not your ideal destination, but is a step towards that destination, because it will get you, if nothing else, it will get you some money, and definitely a lot of learning.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you so much, Shreya. I've learned a lot from our conversation today. We are seeing a definite move towards flexibility, both at the organizational end and at the employee end. And you've spoken about the kinds of organizations which are become open to hiring more flexible workers. And they range from startups who are looking for experienced people to organizations which need seasonal or very specific project based talent to larger organizations which want to hire contractually for headcount reasons or even just to perhaps stay more agile. And there are, the whole benefit of shorter joining periods, perhaps some cost
Yeah.
efficiency, and access to very specific skill sets. And at the employee end, we have all these different talent pools for whom flexi work seems is to be, a much more interesting option than the regular full-time employment. You, of course, work largely with women, but then there are other
Yeah.
talent pools as well.
Yeah.
People with experience who are looking for flexibility and don't want to be tied to a 9 to 5 role. There are PWDs, there are many other talent pools, people who want to specifically hone, have an expertise and want to hone that expertise across a number of situations rather than focusing on, only one organization where their exposure is relatively limited.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. That was truly, truly helpful. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I loved it.
Thank you. So if you enjoyed our conversation today, do not forget to like, comment, share, and let your friends know what you thought of this. And if you liked our conversation today, please check out all our other conversations on the Uncube website. There are 29 of them, and there's a wide variety depending on your area of interest. You're sure to find one that resonates. And with that, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of the weekend. Bye for now.